Thing about the playoffs, man. That's all you care about. You don't care about any bowl games. You don't care about any teams in the country that aren't in the playoffs. I don't know if we don't win this game. Maybe we throw a stink bomb out there. Maybe we don't get in the playoffs. I don't know. You guys got all the answers to all that, but I don't. All right. All I know is if we play and we play well, we control our own destiny in terms of what we do. So I'd really rather not have any more questions about, is it okay to lose this game? It's never okay to lose a game.
And I wanted to ask about Jalen. He's done.
You should have asked that first.
Is he not the best? That was Nick Saban responding to reporters, and the question which was asked was, would his players be okay losing the SEC title game to Florida? Because win or lose, they will probably make the college football playoff. Like, love, or hate this response, Stephen A.
Oh, I love the response. It doesn't bother me. I do concern myself with media members. Every question is not going to be great, but I firmly and adamantly believe you should not be scared to ask a question you deem necessary to ask. I think a lot of times, me personally, I think that's a sickness of mine, Max. I'll be the first to admit it. I'm quite sure it makes people uncomfortable for a coach or somebody to get at you. I crave the thought of a coach thinking they could come at me like that. I would love it. I'd have a bunch of questions.
Come back out.
Right back. Let's go. I don't work for you.
I need to see you at some press conferences.
You wouldn't, because I don't worry about stuff like that, because I'm going to go there to do my job, not to humiliate anybody or do anything. But I'm going to ask the questions that I think people want to know. I love it because I love Saban's realness. I love his commitment to excellence. I love the fact that he doesn't let players, his team, or anybody in his coach that, just like he went off on Lane Kiffin on the sideline during the game earlier this year. He lets no one off the hook. He is about accountability, and I love that man for it. He's the greatest coach in college football. I think he's one of the greatest coaches ever. My problem, the only issue I have, Max, is with his words about, you guys, that's all you care about. Well, what the hell are you looking at the media for? That's the NCAA's decision. You know, whoever came up with the bowl system, you know, the FBS and, you know, the Power 5 conferences and all of this other stuff. It's like those folks in Alabama, let's call it what it is. The newspaper industry, the media industry overall has changed dramatically. So you talking to dudes, this is their livelihood. They ain't getting paid the $7 million he's getting paid. He's Alabama. Therefore, you know, they walk in there, they tick him off. They might not get any access. You compromising their job. I love his realness. I love his commitment to excellence. I love all of those things about Nick Saban. But he does come across as a bully. And I would say this, Max, in closing. One of my proudest moments was seeing him with Paul Feinbaum on the sports, I think it was the Sports Center desk or wherever it was at the SEC Media Day. Paul Feinbaum asked him a question. Nick Saban came right back at him. Paul Feinbaum came right back at him.
Paul could not care less.
Paul can't care less. And more importantly, Paul is a dude who's a big-time radio host, an exceptional radio host, an exceptional information guy as well, who won't back down and don't have to worry about Nick Saban compromising. Now, I do respect Nick went right back at him, because Nick is showing you that's just who Nick is. He ain't just picking on a little guy. It's just that sometimes I find myself wishing, like, damn, those are little guys. Could you give him some slack?
I love this, and I love the entire interaction. I love the question, and I love Nick Saban's response. And I will tell you why. It's not, the job here is not for the reporter to make himself look good, nor is the job for Nick Saban to make himself look good. What they're trying to create here is content for the consumer. Ideally, the kind of content that not only entertains, which this did, but illuminates the thought process of the coach. What makes him tick? How does he approach things? The reporter, the thrust of the question really was, given the fact that you're guaranteed a playoff berth by and large, how do you keep your guys motivated, right? Like, what do you do to keep them wanting to win? And Nick Saban gave an illuminating answer. It illuminated his thought process, his approach, his world view about his job, which is very Belichickian, right? And it makes sense off that tree. It's respect for the opponent, respect for the task at hand, respect for tradition, And that's why he is, and respect for the amount of work and focus he needs. And that's why he's the best coach maybe in the history of college football, because he has that same approach as Belichick. He can't entertain ideas of losing. What do you mean how I keep my guys motivated, because let's face it, the playoff does undermine the conference championships. It does. It undermines them, whether people like it or not. And Nick Saban's point is, forget about all that. We have a game coming up. I have too much respect for the game itself and for the opponent and for the traditions of this game to say just because we're in a playoff berth, maybe guaranteed, we somehow need to approach this any differently than we do every time. It was an illuminating response for him. It gave me, the consumer, everything I needed, both the reporter and Nick Saban.
Couple of things. That's fine and good. But the reality is that there have been times in the past where Nick Saban has been quoted about how his players may have been feeling themselves a little bit, reading too many of the headlines, and as a result, didn't come in with the necessary focus they should have. He has said that in the past. Secondly, when the reporter is asking Nick Saban the question, he obviously ain't talking about Nick Saban, not just because of Nick Saban's commitment to excellence, but also because he ain't the one that's on the field. Those players are. So you're asking about kids on a college campus, and how are you going to maintain a level of focus upon them? It was a fair question. The only other thing that I would like to add is this. To those reporters out there in Alabama who I think do an outstanding job of covering this university and their team and whatever, keep doing your job, and just remember one thing. The questions that you ask are about what you know the fans and the public want to know. It ain't about appeasing Nick Saban, as great and phenomenal as Nick Saban is. And there is no bigger fan of Nick Saban than me. At the same time, under no circumstances do you let that man intimidate you, because I watch him doing these press conferences and I get the impression that he intimidates a lot of damn people. And I'm saying to them, don't back
Ask
off.
your best question
Don't
first.
back
Note
off.
to self.
I will ask the questions when I want to answer. Don't tell. In other words, if you Nick Saban, I would have came back and said, "Excuse me, I'm asking it now. Don't tell me what to ask. You do your job, I'll do mine."
Even that, though, was illuminating. My advice would be, in an ideal world, I know this isn't the way it works for people's careers, because if you're seen as soft, you don't advance in your career in media the way others do. But my advice would be, in an ideal world, what we should strive for is just getting the stuff you need.
That's it.
And by asking that question, Nick Saban's response, Molly, I think the reason he says you should have asked me that first is because it demonstrates how serious he is about his process. And in that response, he illuminates his thought process and his approach.
You're right. You're absolutely right. But what I'm saying...
So the reporter did his job. He got what he needed.
He did his job. He got what he needed. And that's fine. Saban's a boss. He could come across as a bully. It is what it is. I totally understand it. All I'm saying is that if you're a reporter, don't back up. By the way, always remember, let me give... I've only been a reporter for over 23 years. Let me say this. To the reporters out there, and they know this, I'm not telling them something they don't know. I don't know of any reporter who has had Thanksgiving dinner with an athlete or a coach or exchanged Christmas gifts. You understand? It don't matter. We be fair, be a human being, but understand they're going to go their merry way. You go yours. Do your thing.
Let's put this Tony Romo stuff to bed, okay? The man's had 3 back surgeries. He's got a collarbone that's been broken twice. He's 36 years old. He plays behind, the last couple of years, he played behind probably the best offensive line in football. Hasn't finished the season in the last 5. Any general manager that would make a deal for Tony Romo shouldn't keep their job as a general manager. I mean, it's a bad business decision.
That was Joe Theismann telling Bleacher Report that any GM who trades for Tony Romo should be fired, calling it a bad business decision. Max? Is Theismann right? Not
only is he right, I have very little to add. It's not that Tony Romo isn't excellent, Will. I know he's an excellent quarterback, Stephen A. You underestimate him. He is an excellent quarterback when he's on the field.
In the regular season.
But his recent medical history indicates that he will never be on the field for an entire season. He won't make it through. He's actually best served as the backup on the Dallas Cowboys. He's best served as a guy on the bench who, if the starter is hurt, can come in and give you elite level quarterback play for a couple of games because he has chronic back conditions, plural. That means he will never make it through a season, so you can't game plan a season around him, and you can't chew up a big chunk of your salary cap on him. Theismann's 100% right.
What does chronic mean?
Over and over again over time.
Over and over again?
Yeah.
It's like the same thing happening over and over again?
Yeah.
And you generalized his back as one condition. His back.
Conditions.
The spine.
I said
going
plural.
from here to here,
Yes.
that's one thing.
Yeah, the spine bones.
A lot of people don't know
spine
this,
bone.
but I'm going to tell you where it's going because a lot of people don't know this, but during the commercial break, Max was placing himself among the intellectual elites of the country, I believe, and I can't believe you would then go on the minute the cameras come on and align yourself with some of the most moronic comments I've heard in football of the last year or so.
You actually placed me there unknowingly, but go ahead.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous by Joe Theismann. Joe Theismann was a great NFL quarterback. He has not proven to be a great GM, and he sure hasn't proven to be a medical doctor, nor has the intellectual Max Kellerman proven to be a medical doctor. Tony Romo has had the following injuries: pinky, collarbone, ruptured disc, transverse process. Yeah, in the back region, but different, right?
I see.
I mean,
because the backbone is not connected to the backbone,
a literally
right?
different
Or the
part of your
thigh
back.
bone.
Yeah.
Collarbone, and
My
compression
bad.
factor.
Yeah.
Those are not the same injuries. They're not recurring injuries like saying
I see.
a degenerative knee or an ACL that keeps tearing. These are individual freak accidents. Now, is Tony...
Oh, come on, Will.
You can't say that with a straight face. Say it again with a straight face. Say it again with a straight face.
You don't even mean
I have
it.
never
You
come
don't-
on this
you
show.
don't even mean it. There's a first time for everything. This is your first time. You don't mean it.
And Will, I will say that statement certainly doesn't place you on the intellectual
You get an
situation.
I
A
mean
for
it.
effort.
I mean it. I would never come on this show. I have enough respect for not only this show, but the
This is
concept
very
of debate
entertaining.
I understand.
to hold an opinion that I
understand.
only think and feel.
I understand. I understand. Go ahead.
These injuries are not connected. These are not chronic.
Except by the back.
You laugh and it makes me laugh. That's why I'm smiling.
The backbone's connected to the... Go ahead, Will. I'm listening. Go ahead.
Tony Romo statistically has been one of the most dominant quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Quit laughing, Max. You're making it seem like I don't mean
By
this.
dominant, you mean injury-prone
I
quarterback?
mean a top 5 quarterback
Yeah,
over the last
of
decade.
course.
Most fourth quarter comebacks. Highest passer rating above active quarterbacks. The Denver Broncos, or if you want to go into the non-contender status, Chicago Bears or New York Jets would be very well off to trade for Tony Romo.
Five
There's a
games.
price to everything. And just because he's been hurt, I think it's only 3 of the last 4 seasons, doesn't mean he's
not a bad
Please put the
Yes.
camera on Will and say that again.
Max.
Wait, please put it on Will and just repeat that phrase. What was it? He's just because he's been hurt. What? How many times?
I'm gonna rest my argument here. I will not be going to Max Kellerman or Joe Theismann for medical opinions on chronic things or what you call damaged goods. I will instead stick with Tony Romo.
First of all, nobody's accusing Joe Theismann of being a doctor, but he is a Super Bowl champion quarterback from the NFC East, which is something Tony Romo has never been, and we now know officially he will never be. And that's the reality of the situation. See, Will, where Max got lost in this argument, but I have not, is that the last time I saw you, we were talking about how Tony Romo was going to be inserted as the starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, and how Tony Romo was going to lead them to the promised land, and how Jerry Jones was going to see to it, and how Dak Prescott...
So you're not going to talk about Theismann? You're going to talk about me?
No. That's what I'm talking about here. I'll let you speak. This is what we were talking about. And so what has happened is you're in quite a quandary here, because on one hand, you love your Dallas Cowboys, and you love what you're seeing Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott and the crew do. On the other hand, the more they do it, the more it ensures your prognostication, how inept, how out there, how lost you were when it came to Tony Romo. So I understand. It's a troubling situation. You can think about it and come back next week and recover.
No, I'm
Because
here. I'm ready.
You're in no position to do it right now. Here's the deal. Tony Romo, for all the greatness that you talk about with him, that's regular season, 78-49 record, completing 65% of his passes. The brother's big time during the regular season. Come postseason, he has 2 playoff victories in 10 years. Will Kane, I know you know this. In order to win 1 Super Bowl, you actually have to win a minimum of 3 postseason games in the same season. This man hasn't won more than 2 in 10 years. It is over. And at the end of the day, what it comes down to is this, Will. You can make all the arguments that you want, but Joe Theismann, he ain't a doctor, but he is a quarterback. He did play in the NFC East. He has won a Super Bowl, and more importantly, he's had personal conversations with Tony Romo where he has suggested to Tony Romo that you should retire because of how risky it is. I've interviewed Joe Theismann. I know Joe Theismann. I've spoken to him on many occasions about this. This is not something that Tony Romo is reading about or hearing about on the news. He has looked Tony Romo in the face, and he has said, in the interest of you and your family, these injuries are no joke. And so in that regard, I will only answer it by saying this. Should somebody take Tony Romo? Hell no. Unless you can get him on the cheap so when he gets hurt, it doesn't affect you financially.
Put him on the bench.
That's it.
All right.
Number one.
Yeah.
Number one.
I
I don't need a week to form a rebuttal for you. I need 2 seconds. It happens live.
I know you think
as
that.
we're speaking. There's no
I know
week needed. I'm ready now.
Intellectual
think that.
elite in the country.
I know you think
That's
that.
number
There we
one.
go. The
That's
intellectual
number
elite.
one. Number
Go
two,
ahead.
you haven't peeled back the curtain. You haven't showed anybody the predicament that I'm in that I've got to now argue my way out of with my Tony Romo opinion.
I actually think you did a good job on Mike, and I watched you, and at no time did you address your faux pas when it came to Tony Romo. You, as a matter of fact, avoided that subject religiously, if I recall correctly. Max, I just want you to know. He avoided the subject.
Which number three I will address now. I was not wrong.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was not
so
wrong.
you on the air for 4 hours, you ain't have time to address it then, but you here for a few minutes. You got time.
I say
Take
my
your
good
time.
stuff for you.
Take your time.
I say my
Take
good
your
stuff
time.
for you.
Go ahead.
Well, let me.
No, I'm going to put in the spotlight.
Go ahead.
I'm going to dance around in the
You're gonna-
spotlight.
you've been
I'm not getting
dancing a lot
out.
this
I'm not
morning.
trying to get in the darkness. I'm going to dance in the spotlight. Here it
ahead.
is.
You've been doing
Tony
it.
Romo, I still predict, will play a pivotal role for the Dallas Cowboys before the season is over. Either injury or bad play will force Tony Romo onto the field. Dak Prescott is great. I'm so excited about Dak Prescott to be the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys for the next decade. He is playing at a level it's hard to imagine anyone else could play better. But I still know that rookie has never won the Super Bowl, and I still know that Tony Romo could be hitting Des Bryant on some of these routes he's burned Josh Norman on down the field. I think Tony Romo could be operating behind this offensive line on this team at a very, very high level.
Pause, I got
Hold
a
on.
question.
And he will this season.
I got a
He will
question.
this
I
season.
got a question. Am I to understand when you made the statement that no rookie quarterback has ever won a Super Bowl, you believe, even right now, that the return of Tony Romo would elevate the Cowboys' chances of winning a Super Bowl rather than leaving Dak Scott in the lineup?
I think it's 6 one way, half a dozen another.
Oh,
I
Lord,
think
what
they're
kind
both
of damn answer is that? What's your answer?
I think the
He
Dallas
thinks
Cowboys
Tony
can
Romo
win the
would be
Super
better.
Bowl with Dak Prescott or Tony Romo.
So then what you sweating about Tony Romo
Balls in
for
the
then?
airport.
So what you sweating about Tony Romo for then? Why do you feel this compulsion? Why do you feel this need to get Tony Romo back in the lineup if Dak Prescott can win with it?
You're sweating a little bit.
You
Little
are
bit.
sweating.
Rookie
You didn't
can
know
win
this?
the Super
We
Bowl.
saw the makeup artists come over here and touch up a little bit. You're sweating a little bit. What's going on?
still-
I mean, Dak Prescott, you don't think, can Dak Prescott win with the Cowboys?
Yes.
The Super
Keep
Bowl?
going. Second
So
question is.
why are you worried? Why do you feel the need for Tony Romo? Because I believe Tony Romo can
I didn't
get in the
say
game.
I do.
A matter of fact, I'm counting that I hope your prediction is correct. Because to me, if Tony Romo gets back in the lineup, it ensures the Cowboys will win the Super Bowl. I hope it happens.
This is what
He
I
said
want to know. Hold on, hold
a
on.
pivotal
This is
role.
what I want to know. Why do you need to be a doctor to know that if a guy misses 3 of the last 4 seasons, he's injury prone? It's like,
They're
did you need a
isolated
doctor?
injuries, Max.
Did
Don't you know they're not connected?
Did you need a doctor to
on.
tell you that
It's not as
Cal
strong as
Ripken
day for you,
Jr.
Will.
was
It's
a
not as
healthy
strong as
guy?
day for you. Bad morning.
I'm
Did you get
highly-
a doctor for that?
Will,
If
I'm
that's
highly
true,
entertained.
If that's true,
Right.
I'm completely lacking self-awareness because I
Okay.
feel pretty good about this.
Real good. Good. Let's leave it on that note.
We'll leave
This
it on
was
that.
fun, Will. Always good
I
to
think
see
I'm
you.
pretty self-aware, Molly.
You are.
Not
but
this
a little
morning.
lost right now.
Not this morning.
Let's
Little
keep-
lost. Bad
let's
morning
keep
for
it-
you.
Let's keep
Bad
it
Have you
morning.
ever admitted defeat? Ever? Ever?
Say what?
Ever? Have you ever admitted
I've
defeat?
never had
he's
to.
lost.
Never
I've
had
never had
to.
to.
It's just so obvious that it
I've
doesn't
never
need
had
to be said
It
on
doesn't
this show.
happen. It doesn't happen. That's why.
I rest my case.
He believes it. No awareness.